So the New York Times have done some investigative work to discover how it was that Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh was eliminated. This was a Hamas terror chief, and it was an absolute stunning achievement by whoever it was, because no one's owned up to it yet. But I'm sure we can all speculate on how this amazing mission was accomplished and who achieved it. But let's read what the New York Times has written about this, because we now have some information. So this home that you're looking at, that you see, was the heavily guarded complex where Haniyeh was known to stay in Iran. And this is what they have found. It looks like a bomb was smuggled in to the guest house months ago. So Ismail Haniyeh, top leader of Hamas, was assassinated on Wednesday by an explosive device covertly smuggled into the Tehran guest house, where he was staying, according to 7 Middle Eastern officials, including 2 Iranians and an American official. The bomb had been hidden approximately 2 months ago in the guest house, according to 5 of the Middle Eastern officials. The guest house is run and protected by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and is part of a large compound known as Neshat in an upscale neighborhood of northern Tehran. Mr. Haniyeh was in Iran's capital for the presidential inauguration. The bomb was detonated remotely, the 5 officials said, once it was confirmed that he was inside his room at the guest house. The blast also killed a bodyguard. The explosion shook the building, shattered some windows, and caused the partial collapse of an exterior wall, according to the 2 Iranian officials. Members of the Revolutionary Guard Corps briefed on the incident. Such damage was also evident in a photograph of the building shared with the New York Times. Mr. Haniyeh, who had led Hamas' political office in Qatar, had stayed at the guest house several times when visiting Tehran, according to Middle Eastern officials. All of the officials spoke on the condition of anonymity to share sensitive details about the assassination. And I just don't think we can fully underestimate and understate how much of a remarkable achievement this was, to do this inside of Tehran, the capital of Iran. Iranian officials and Hamas said Wednesday that Israel was responsible for the assassination, an assessment also reached by several US officials who requested anonymity. The assassination threatened to unleash another wave of violence in the Middle East. Oh, please. I'm sorry, just to pause for 1 sec while I'm reading this article, but Israel eliminating a chief modern-day Nazi? That's escalation, that's provocation. Well, frankly, if that's provocation, then we do so gladly. If our survival is somehow provocation, it's just ridiculous. The way they try to normalise these people, like Haniyeh, as if they're some kind of sensible, legitimate actors. This is a terrorist in a suit. Anyway, the article continues, the assassination threatened to unleash another wave of violence in the Middle East and upend the ongoing negotiations to end the war in Gaza. Mr. Haniyeh had been a top negotiator in the ceasefire talks. Oh, how marvellous for him. Israel had not publicly acknowledged responsibility for the killing, but Israeli intelligence officials briefed the United States and other Western governments on the details of the operation and the aftermath, according to 5 Middle Eastern officials. On Wednesday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the United States had received no advance knowledge of the assassination plot. In the hours after the killing, speculation immediately focused on the possibility that Israel had killed Haniyeh with a missile strike, possibly fired from a drone or plane, similar to how Israel had launched a missile on a military base in Isfahan in April. The missile theory raised questions about how Israel might have been able to evade Iranian air defense systems, again, to execute such a brazen airstrike in the capital. As it turns out, the assassins were able to exploit a different kind of gap in Iran's defenses, a lapse in the security of a supposedly tightly guarded compound that allowed a bomb to be planted and to remain hidden for many weeks before it would eventually be triggered. Such a breach, 3 Iranian officials said, was a catastrophic failure of intelligence and security for Iran, and a tremendous embarrassment for the guards, which used the compound for retreats, secret meetings, and housing prominent guests like Mr. Haniyeh. How the bomb was stashed in the guest house remained unclear. The Middle Eastern officials said that the planning for the assassination took months and required extensive surveillance of the compound. The 2 Iranian officials who described the nature of the assassination said they did not know how or when the explosives were planted inside of the room. Israel decided to carry out the assassination outside Qatar, where Mr. Haniyeh and other senior members of Hamas political leadership live. The Qatari government has been mediating the negotiations between Israel and Hamas over a ceasefire in Gaza. The deadly blast earlier Wednesday shattered windows and collapsed a portion of the wall on the compound. Photographs showed, and the Iranian officials said, it appeared to do minimal damage beyond the building itself, as a missile probably would have done. At around 2 a.m. local time, the device exploded, according to the Middle Eastern officials, including the Iranians. Startled building staff members, the officials said, ran to find the source of the tremendous noise, leading them to the room where Mr. Haniyeh was staying with a bodyguard. The compound is staffed with a medical team, which rushed to the room immediately after the explosion. The team declared that Mr. Haniyeh died immediately. The team tried to revive the bodyguard, but he too was dead. The leader of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Ziad al-Nakhala, was staying next door, two of the Iranian officials said. His room was not badly damaged, suggesting precise planning in the targeting of Mr. Haniyeh. Khalil al-Hayya, the deputy commander of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, was also in Tehran, arrived at the scene and saw his colleague's body, according to 5 Middle Eastern officials. Among the people immediately notified, said the 3 Iranian official, was General Ismail Haniyeh, the commander-in-chief of the Quds Force, the overseas arm of the Revolutionary Guard, which works closely with Iranian allies in the region, including Hamas and Hezbollah. He notified Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, in the middle of the night, waking him up, the officials said. 4 hours after the blast, the Revolutionary Guards issued a statement that Mr. Haniyeh had been killed. By 7 a.m, Mr. Khamenei had summoned the members of Iran's Supreme National Security Council to his compound for an emergency meeting, at which he issued an order to strike Israel in retaliation, according to the 3 Iranian officials. Tehran had already been under heightened security because of the inauguration of Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian, with senior government officials, military commanders and dignitaries from 86 countries gathering at Parliament in central Tehran for the ceremony. Mr. Haniyeh had looked cheerful and triumphant in this picture that you can see on the screen, which was on Tuesday, during the swearing-in, hugging the new president after he delivered his inaugural speech, and the two men raised their hands together, marking the victory sign. In Iran, the method of assassination was a subject of rumour and dispute. The Tasnim news agency, the media outlet for the guards, reported that the witnesses said an object like a missile had hit the window of Mr. Haniyeh's room and exploded. But the 2 Iranian officials, the members of the guards, briefed on the attack, confirmed the explosion had taken place inside Mr. Haniyeh's room and said that an initial investigation showed the explosives had been placed there some time in advance. They described the attack's precision and sophistication as similar in tactics to the remote-controlled AI robot weapon that Israel used to assassinate Iran's top nuclear scientist, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, in 2020. Israeli assassination operations outside of the country are primarily carried out by Mossad, the country's foreign intelligence service. David Barnea, the head of Mossad, said in January that his service was obliged to hunt down the leaders of Hamas, the group behind the October 7th attacks in Israel. It will take time, as it took after the massacre in Munich, but our hands will catch them wherever they are, Mr. Barnea said, referring to the killing of Israeli athletes by terrorists at the 1972 Olympics. So that's the end of their report. And what I just really would say, and say this very strongly, is that it's quite absurd to say that going after these evil terror leaders who did such appalling acts of evil, not just on October 7th, for many decades prior, that going after them is inflammatory, it's an escalation. It's absolutely justified. And you know what? It makes the world a better place. It helps the cause of peace. Anytime you eliminate threats that are there simply to cause chaos, mayhem, evil, destruction, getting rid of those threats, Judaism teaches, is moral and is right, and it is not an escalation. It is quite the contrary. It's not, or rather, it's escalating the world toward a better place. And so we should not take any heed from people who say that this is, inflammatory. It's just going to enrage everyone. If you have to do what you need to do for security, for justice, you do it. Absolutely. And sometimes, actually, often we find that the kind of fears that people have, that it's going to be inflammatory, when it's right and just, in the end, you triumph and sometimes can be pleasantly surprised at the lack of reaction. When America moved the embassy to Jerusalem, everyone said, oh, you can't do that, it's going to be so inflammatory, it's going to enrage everyone, it could start a war. What happened? Nothing. Because ultimately, the truth reigns supreme. And when you follow what the truth dictates, it can never be destructive.
Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.